Included Ewing Kaufman, Dan Lowe, David Brain, and Bill Zahner. This year's honoree is none other than Danny O'Neill, Bean Baron of the Roastery. Now, Danny pretty much knows everybody in town. So just like, like probably everyone else in here, I've known Danny for years, and it's been a special treat to watch his humble attitude be met with such success. And if you haven't met Danny, well, watch out, because I can promise you, you'll get sucked into his 6'8", 9, 10, I don't know, inches of charisma. Danny O'Neill's passion for coffee was ignited during a trip to Costa Rica his senior year of high school. His fervor led to founding the Roastery in 1993 on 3 basic premises: to find the best coffees in the world, to roast them the best way known to man, and to get them to his customers as fast as humanly possible. In 2005, the first Roastery Cafe opened in Brookside. The company has grown to include 3 cafes and a roasting factory with an event space. Danny is well regarded in the industry and has earned super taster status on the Specialty Coffee Institute Sensory Aptitude Test in 2001. I guess that's super taster. Additionally, Danny serves on a number of advisory boards for Kansas City companies and associations, including this one, the University of Missouri-Kansas City Board of Trustees. Please join me as we take a look at Danny's amazing entrepreneurial journey.
In 1993, you did not quit a great job and just not do anything. I mean, you just didn't do that. I just had this overwhelming sense that I needed to do something different with my life. Coffee was the only idea that I had. I was so naive, I didn't have near enough money saved up or anything like that. Almost everybody else thought I was kind of crazy. There was a big bookstore on Metcalf, and I went in with with the intention of buying every single thing I could about coffee and getting into it and researching it. And there were 2 books and a VHS tape, and that was it. That was all that there was on coffee. The coffee culture just simply wasn't here at the time. I said whole bean back then, and people were like, "What do you mean? Coffee it's a bean?" So 3 months went by where I'm out trying to make a sale all day, every single day, and I didn't make a single sale. To feel like a total abject loser is like understatement. And I just kept getting up and doing it, kept getting up and doing it. And I just wasn't gonna quit until I had to quit. And we came, within 3 days of getting my house repossessed, and we're working 20, 21 hours a day. And that's the absolute truth. I say we, it was my dog and I at the time. The first order I got was KU Med Center, and it was for 10 pounds, and so it was probably $37. And I still remember driving down State Line Road just shaking. That order changed everything. The Roastery today versus where it was then, a lot of it hasn't changed. Buy the best coffee we could find in the world, roast it the best way known to mankind, and get it to the customer as fast as humanly possible. And that is still absolutely the 3-legged stool today. We focus on that. What has changed is we just keep getting faster, faster, faster. Absolutely love whatever you do. Coffee was the only idea that I had. It'd kind of be this, good luck with that, make a living doing that. And well, I did. Thank you all very much. Thanks Bob Rainier and John and Leo and Bob
And thank you all very much. We super appreciate all you being here. And had I had the foresight of our illustrious student entrepreneur of the year, I would have sent this before and I could have had this on the teleprompter. But I didn't. Barnett grabbed me on the way up here and said, stick to the script and don't jack it up. So I won't, Barnett. But it is an absolute honor to be chosen for this award. My wife did her best to convince them that they had the wrong guy, but here I am. But growing up in a small town in Iowa, we just did what seemed like everybody else was doing. We baled hay, detasseled corn, shoveled snow, chopped thistles, fixed fence, delivered newspapers, mowed lawns. In fact, when I mowed lawns, I'd get the lawnmower position just right, and I'd go by with my left hand, and I'd get it with when I was riding my motorcycle, I would just go from lawn to lawn around the little town. That's how I mowed lawns, and nobody thought a thing of it. But we just always worked, and it never seemed like duress, but rather just kind of woven into our lives. I'll keep my remarks very brief. My mind races. My mind always races with ideas around entrepreneurship in Kansas City. But I'll focus on those who helped me by being a mentor, setting a great example for both. I'd like to begin by thanking God for the rich, rewarding, and extremely fortunate life that He laid out in front of me. Barnett and Warren Buffett would say, thank God for being lucky enough to have won the lottery and been born in this great country, giving each of us a built-in advantage over 95% of the rest of the world. I think Gary's pointed that out vividly. Thanks to my wife, because David Brain, I'm going to thank my wife. David reminded me, and my children, Terry and Sophie, for all their support. And my team who's here tonight, and several friends, thank you so much. I thank my parents, Betty and Terry O'Neill. From Dad, I learned always go your best, always do more than is asked of you, and never, ever, ever quit, ever. From Mom, have faith, be the best husband that you can be the best father that you can be. That's pretty much it. Coach Van Heck, our football coach, take what you have, work at it, and never be satisfied. And the infamous unhook the plow. I actually sent that to somebody I ordered something from last week, and he asked what it meant, but I didn't answer him. But we could never ever move quickly enough for Coach Van Heck. And from Coach Hawk, position yourself for success. Should the play come your way, be in a position to take advantage and make the play. And from Barnett, I could go on all night about Barnett, but Barnett said, you need a lot of help. You know, I'm good, but I'm not a miracle worker. You know, Barnett has a lot of money. But more than anything else, he has an intrinsic desire to help others. We've all been witness to Barnett's absolute generousness with his time, the most precious commodity of all. Barnett puts his money where his mouth is, and for 21 years, I've been lucky enough to absorb hundreds of life lessons from him. The most impactful have been, don't kid yourself, you're lucky. You've been lucky. And the harder you work, the luckier you'll be. And Barnett always says, just because you did that doesn't mean you can do that. And any other entrepreneur out there knows exactly what that means. And what got you here isn't what is going to be what gets you there. And the most brilliant of all for me, if you're smart, you'll learn from your mistakes. If you're wise, you'll learn from the mistakes of others. Barnett invited me to join him, and once I went through the list of help and advice that I needed, he dumped me and assigned me Henry Block to the poor task. And aside from being the nicest, dearest, most humble man I know, Henry is one of the best teachers in the world. I love him for the countless ways that he went out of his way to help me. When we first met, I took in about a dozen or so 3-ring binders and I set them on his desk. And after a little bit, Henry asked, you don't want to go through those, do you? And I said, oh heavens, no, I just have them in case you wanted to go through them or you asked some questions. And thankfully that he didn't want to go through them. Henry and I would meet about every 2 months, and he'd pick up the conversation right where we left off. He'd ask questions like all the best teachers in the world would ask, and often I'd be quick to answer. And then weeks or months later, it would dawn on me what Henry was really asking, and I'd be embarrassed that I'd answered it so shallowly and foolishly. But he always made me feel competent, and his wisdom oozed from his bright, deep blue, gorgeous eyes. Henry doesn't even know this, but he gave me the single best business advice I'd ever been given. In our initial meeting, I told him that I was from a small town in Iowa, and that I had a political science and international studies majors, and that I didn't know much about business. He told me how after he completed his service in World War II, 32 missions as a navigator of the B-17, how he came home and took his $50 a month GI money and started a bookkeeping service. And then he paused, told me that he wasn't an accountant, and that he didn't really know much about bookkeeping. But that he had figured out early on that if he hired people better than him, smarter than him, and this is where he paused again, leaned forward, and with his beautiful blue eyes sparkling, he said, and in my case, that wasn't very hard to do. But if he hired those folks better than him in every position in the company, then they just might succeed. And that moment changed my life forever. Most everything about running a business was Greek to me, and it all seemed so hard. But I still get goosebumps when I recall how I felt at that moment. I knew that I could go and do the same thing, and I did. I saw folks better and smarter than me for every position that we hired for. And aside from being the founder and playing that role, that's a little hard to outsource. We have somebody better at every position in the company than I could be at each role. And it was incredibly liberating. Our growth as a company absolutely shut up from that day forward. And the biggest dividends were yet to come 10 years later when we began building a family. Because of Henry's wise counsel, I had populated the company with folks who, for the most part, didn't need me. So I could be present with my family, as I would never have been able to be had I tried to do it all myself. Another instrumental mentor was our dear friend Grant Burcham, also our banker since 1994. There were a great many times when we flat out had no money and Missouri Bank pulled us through. The advice most lasting from Grant was, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And hence, a great number of train wrecks never had to happen. Sister Gertrude used to say, if you chew gum, nobody should know. I wish more people would follow that advice about a lot more activities than just chewing gum. But what I learned at St. Rosa Lima was a prelude to what I would learn at Rockhurst University. Father Kern is the epitome of the Jesuit motto, men and women of and for others. He continues to teach me about being deliberate, intentional, and purposeful in all that I do. He embodies all of the qualities and characteristics that I admire in leaders, and has played a transformative role in my life. While at Rockhurst University, there were two key learning experiences, 15 years apart, which made indelible imprints on my belief system. The first was an MBA student where we'd have these running arguments in the MBA when we'd have these running arguments about corporate responsibility. Finally, one of my professors had enough and he shouted, I can't say what he shouted, but BS is what he said. And when a student had said something about fiduciary responsibility to the stockholder or something like that, and he said, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the stakeholders, which includes the stockholders. And this totally shaped my view on business as well as how we look at ourselves, our brand, and our social responsibility. The second key learning experience was at an entrepreneurial conference that happened to be held on the Rockhurst campus. There were about a dozen local folks, and we were discussing the local region, and I mentioned that I was just really grateful and how much I wanted to give back. And I won't go through all the details, but he kind of proceeded to dress me down and say he was sick and tired of flipping here and that and flipping giving back, and I didn't know anybody anything, and I was kind of taken aback, and I said, are you serious? He goes, yes, I'm serious. You don't know anybody anything. You started with nothing, and da. There was a whole group of them, and they all pretty much felt the same way, and I said, I'm 6'8", white guy, and you don't think I have like a built-in advantage over 95% of the other folks out there? Oh, you think size has something to do with it? And I said, oh my God, look it up. Tall people, they get a pass too often. Way more than we should. And I just thought after that, I thought, but for the grace of God, I could be in that. Had I not met Henry, had I not met Barnett, had I not met Bill Dunn Sr. and all the rest of the folks, the Halls and everybody else that made such great impressions, and all we have to do is just follow that lead. I could have been one of them. And you'd never in your life would you hear Barnett or Henry or any of the other great mentors I mentioned speak that way. We are truly blessed here in Kansas City, in the Midwest in general, Kansas City in particular, to have great leaders who are willing to take the time to mentor those that follow. And as importantly, we know the difference between a stakeholder and a stockholder. Any clerk anywhere can hold a blind allegiance to the stockholder. But that is absolutely not leadership, and we don't need any mentoring in how to be ruthless or selfish. I feel like the luckiest guy in the world and remain ever grateful for all of you who have helped us along this awesome journey. It takes a village, a community, a team of people. It always comes down to the people. And I've been blessed to have been surrounded by the best people in the world my entire life. And I'm grateful for all the support that this great town of Kansas City has shown for our little company. Thank you. Godspeed to each and every one of you.